Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to another weather forecast here by Agent Weather Forecast, and this is going to be another tropical update here. Just a long-range forecast on weather conditions will favor us seeing a pretty active July, and maybe June can blow up just before it ends. But as well, we'll be looking at the new form Invest 95L. So basically, we'll be looking at 95L and just overall conditions for the next few weeks. And yeah, that's exactly what we're going to be talking about. So if you love tropical forecasts, I would recommend you guys do subscribe to the channel. And as well, be sure to smash that like button and bell icon so I know you guys like these videos. And as well, so you guys can get notified as soon as I post a tropical update or any type of upload. But without further ado, let's get in the forecast. So let's now go ahead and get a look now at the 5-day tropical weather outlook here by the National Hurricane Center. Let's now go ahead and get a look at the new 2 p.m. advisory, since we just got a new advisory update. So now this advisory, or not this advisory, sorry, this area of low just outside the Western Antilles is now 0% for the next 48 and 5 days. So there's not really much to really look about that, because there is going to be a lot of shear increasing overall in that region. And now we have a very large new AOI here for the MDR. This is covering a large region just outside Africa all the way across the MDR. And this now has a 20 to 40%. The only thing about this likelihood of this forming is continuing to decrease here as shear and dry air is becoming a lot more frequent, so it kind of misses its chance. But we still do have a few thunderstorms, and overall this did come from a strong African wave, which is why it was very likely to form or at least become interesting. But overall conditions are becoming a lot less conductive to favor this storm. But let's not go and get a look here at IR on this. So here's looking at the IR forecast here on 95L. So as you do see, this low pressure is kind of a little bit towards the, I guess, east of all that convection. So we do have a ton of convection, but this low is not closed whatsoever. And this thing is really losing a ton of convection, actually. Did have up to negative 80 degrees Celsius cloud tops, as obviously it was going through a dual maximum. It was getting very organized convection wise, and we had a ton of lightning strikes. Look at all the lightning we had earlier in that area of high convection. So we definitely had some really strong thunderstorms. But as we go now later into the day, a lot of the convection is really dying out now. We're not really getting anything above negative 70 degrees Celsius. So we are definitely losing a lot of convection. That could be because of the overday heating, allowing for these cloud tops really warm up, which will decrease the amount of lightning we're seeing here, decreasing the amount of convection we're seeing. But we will see how this does tonight. Although there's a lot of shear and dry in the path of the system, we will just see how it interacts with the next 24 hours and see whether it gets to dual maximum by tonight. If it continues on this trend overnight, I do think the National Hurricane Center will start decreasing the probabilities. But at the moment, I think 2040 is definitely something to keep an eye on, because models are starting to become a lot less consistent with showing this. So I do believe that keeping it at 2040 was definitely the right thing to do. Let's not go and get a look here at the overall GEPS tracks and overall looking at minimal pressure. So here it is kind of right now to the southwest of much of the mainland Africa region, and it's expected to not go a little bit more north, because obviously if it were to stay kind of this way, it's way too close to the actual equator, so it really would struggle to form whatsoever. Obviously it just cannot form this far south. So obviously in order for it to actually have a chance to form or become anything interesting, it has to move north, which it will do, and move into portions of the central MDR. Like I did say, though, there is going to be sheer and dry air, but they do have it anywhere from basically 1,010 to maybe 1,005 millibars, so it's still overall kind of weak. While we do have a few models getting it to sub 1,005 millibars and getting it maybe even sub 1,000. But like I did say, I just don't think this has a chance to really form. But they do have these tracks going all the way into the Western Atlantic and even the Caribbean, which will be something we will have to watch out for if it does become interesting and if it does go through these conditions. But obviously there is a likelihood it will die out and none of this will happen and won't even get past the Lesser Antilles at this point. But a track like this is going to be something we have to watch out for later on the season, as conditions will continue to get more favorable. Let's go ahead and look at the model intensity guidance. And obviously you're probably thinking, holy cow, category 4, category 3, they're showing hurricanes for each model. Well, obviously, as we get new invest, these first models love to show category 1 every single time for no reason. But this is just not going to happen whatsoever. And a lot of them, actually every single one of these, have it forming between the next 18 and 36 hours. I mean, that time frame would help. It would have to form within the next 24 hours if it if it wants to stay alive, because conditions will get a lot worse after the next 24 hours. Conditions will really start to diminish here. Shear is going to start really wrapping up and getting a lot more frequent, allowing for that dust SAL to kind of move a little bit further south, which will just eliminate any potential. So it would have to form within the next 24 hours if it wants to be anything. So if it does do that, then we're talking a storm possible, but very short-lived. But Cat 1, strong and tropical storm, I just do not see that happening whatsoever. And even if formation is very unlikely, but if it were to definitely have a possibility, it would have to be within the next 24 hours. So it has to get its act together, it has to get its convection together. And that's why I said if it does not have a dural maximum by tonight, there's really no chance of this even forming whatsoever, because then the next day it'll continue to lose convection and overall structure. Let's now go again and looking at the overall GFS 12Z update for the next 384 hours. So you can kind of see there's that tropical wave, that tropical moisture there into areas off Africa. And actually the GFS does have a 1,009 millibar low pressure, which obviously is not really worth much. And for some reason this wants to continue to like really lag for us. So let's go ahead and stop this from lagging while this kind of refreshes real quick. There we go, finally reload. So there you see 1,009 millibars within the next 18 hours, which we all know, which would not get this forming at all, obviously. Like I did say, it really has 24 hours max if it wants to form, or if it wants to even get its act together. And if it's 1,009 millibars in 18 hours, this thing's not going to form. GFS actually did see this forming a lot more. Actually, this GFS had it lasting throughout the whole MDR last night. So now the fact that malls are really completely just changing their forecast really says a lot about the conditions and how they're changing. As we now go later on, though, we're going to continually watch out for Africa. Although Invest 94L and 95L may be bust, or if anything not even form, we're going to continue to watch out for the next few days before June ends, as we're watching out for more intense tropical waves and conditions. Although the conditions really sparked up out of nowhere, conditions will continue to stay pretty overall favorable for development as well. Even watching out for the Western Caribbean, because maybe we could see some more tropical waves off South America, allowing for low pressures to maybe develop across Yucatan and maybe head once again for the Gulf like we saw last year. So we're really watching out for a lot of areas for the next few weeks here overall, as conditions across the Atlantic will continue to be favorable. And you can kind of see even by July 9th, we actually have another area to watch out for. But like I did say, throughout much of late June to much of July, I do think we do have a lot of potential within the actual MDR. And let's now go ahead and get a look here at the vorticity here on the European. And the Europeans actually now fully refreshing at the moment. They're actually up to 96 hours out. So they do actually have within the next year, if we can actually get these refreshed for a second. I actually forgot to get these hours to actually load for us. So let's go ahead and get these to actual load. I'll be back. Alright, so now I finally reloaded it here. So in the next, let's see, this next 24 hours, you can kind of see there's a small vorticity signature. But for those who saw my video, no, what did I show my video yesterday? No, yesterday was about the fall. Well, for those who saw the last runs yesterday into early this morning, the European was showing a massive, strong vorticity signature. Not like hurricane, but it was a pretty decent signature for vorticity across much of the actual MDR. But now they just have it not even no vorticity whatsoever. So now European GFS are just really dying out on this. Let's not go ahead and get a look here at the GFS for vorticity and see exactly what they want to show. Obviously, GFS is showing only getting to around 1,009 millibars. So as we now get here in the next 0 hours, we do have that small vorticity signature right there into the region where we have that X located on the National Hurricane Center website. And we do have some vorticity, but it's a lot less strong, and it's very, 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 very discreet here. So it's just really disorganized. We're going to be seeing vorticity, but it's not going to be fully tropical, and it's not going to be kind of clockwise. So there's really no need to keep an eye out on that vorticity, because that vorticity signature is really just absolutely nothing. We obviously do have vorticity. That's why the National Hurricane Center labeled it, because there's convection with vorticity in the MDR. But it just really won't be enough. I mean, obviously they do have a little bit better of a signature here, but this is definitely not worth being named or even forming. I mean, that vorticity signature is not even really even invest worthy. I mean, that's just a small pocket of vorticity, and it's just really disorganized. and obviously it really just dies out because of all the dry air. But the thing is that the only thing that's really interesting about this is that the Western Caribbean, it does have vorticity regaining strength in the Western Caribbean, which just has pretty darn favorable conditions. But at the time, there is going to be some shear. That's the only thing about that. But like I did say, the GFS is really taking this down a lot. Let's not get a look here at the actual SST forecast at the moment, what we're seeing. So actually, NDR waters are not that bad at the moment because, again, this thing's far south right here. Obviously, it can't form here, so it has to move north into those cooler waters. The thing is, it really won't reach into these cooler waters, or actually, it won't reach into these cooler waters because that shear is going to just take it apart right here. So by the time it actually makes its way into that track right here, it most likely will die out. Again, the shear is really forecasted to really get a lot stronger overall in this region. So I just doubt it's going to even reach this region. Because obviously, if it were to reach this region, we're talking about maybe 26 degrees, maybe 25.5 degrees Celsius water, which could be enough to sustain a tropical depression, even weak tropical storm. But again, if it's going to be that weak and open, it's going to die out either way. So right now it is in some pretty good waters, 29 degrees Celsius, and then it's going to be moving to those cooler waters, maybe anywhere from 25.5 to 26. But I mean, right now waters are going to continue to trend more to the north here, warm-wise, as we go further into July. As well, overall waters are really warming up right now to the Western Atlantic between the Keys, Cuba, and that region, now reaching over 31 degrees Celsius, if not even getting 32 degrees Celsius between southern Cuba. And even as well, getting some really warm waters outside of the big island of the Bahamas. Let's now go ahead and look at the actual shear forecast, since I've been mentioning shear for a while. So right now, this low pressure is basically right here, and there's a ton of shear ahead of this. I mean, we're talking anywhere from 40 to 50 knots of shear. However, after that shear, there's basically nothing. Anything from 0 knots to 20 knots at the moment. So it's kind of right currently where it is right now is where that shear is going to be a problem. As it goes tomorrow, that shear is going to die out, but it's still going to be anywhere from 30 to maybe even 35 knots. And it's going to be very open, this low pressure. So although the shear does decrease, maybe 25 knots, anywhere from 35 knots in scatter areas, it's going to be too open for it to actually not die. And by the time we actually get to the 26, that shear really increases. Once again, that exact same region going to get over 50 knots of shear. So this thing's just not going to have a favorable atmosphere anymore. Like I just said, it has to form within the next 24 hours as that shear kind of decreases a little bit. And then after 24 hours, it's going to really just start increasing that shear. It's going to continue to increase all the way into the central MDR. And at that point, if it does survive near the Lesser Antilles, another wave of shear is going to happen. So overall, nothing's going to happen with the storm, really. But let's not go further out into the actual July region. Watching out for early July, going to be seeing a lot less shear in the actual MDR. We will be seeing some areas of maybe over 30 knots off Africa, but other than that, there's going to be big areas of less than 10 knots. And that's what we've been watching out for the Western Caribbean, because there is going to be seeing some time frames, especially even into the Gulf of Mexico by July 4th, with very little shear. So if a storm, if we see a moisture bubble or even a moisture wave or even tropical wave at the same time where we don't see shear, although maybe a small time frame without shear, we can very well see storms form within those small pockets of no shear, and it's going to continue in the Gulf of Mexico. Overall, though, it's going to be looking pretty good for the MDR. Shear will gradually increase as we get into July and become more frequent, but we're still going to be seeing large waves of very little shear, so overall conditions are going to get a little bit more better, although they were a lot better for 94 hour and all that. It was a big pocket of no shear and the MDR. So shear is going to become more frequent as we get into July, according to the GFS. But we're still going to be seeing frequent bubbles of very little shear. So obviously, if it has a moisture bubble and if it develops at the right time, right location, we can very well see storms in the MDR by July. Let's not go ahead and get a look at the actual precipitation forecast. So we do have a pretty significant moisture bubble from this strong tropical African wave. So dry air is going to be coming from the north here. We are going to be seeing some dry air from the SAL, and it's going to continue to move further southward. So although we have a pretty significant moisture bubble, that moisture bubble is going to kind of really break, because you can kind of see that moisture bubble moves eastward and then it just stays to the south. So it's going to be very open, slow pressure, and a lot of dry air. So it's just not going to really happen at all. It does have a pretty good moisture bubble for now, and maybe for the next 18 hours or so. But after that, it just gets ripped apart here. But let's now go ahead and get a look at the other moisture bubbles and see if we have any more tropical waves to watch out for. So things like this is going to be something to watch out for. Moisture waves and tropical waves coming off South America is going to be something to watch out for the Western Caribbean, because if we see things like that continue to July, so many tropical waves, and we do have very little shear at the same time, we can be seeing some storms for the Western Caribbean and Gulf of Mexico very likely as well. We've been watching out for tropical waves that come off the MDR because overall, although there could be some shear, we're going to be seeing very minimal dry air. And as well, going to be seeing some pretty significant moisture bubbles coming off Africa, but as well, really watching out for the Western Atlantic and even Western Caribbean for those tropical waves that come off the Western Antilles and come off the South American region. And that's going to really allow for a threat maybe for some storms, even in the Western Caribbean and Western Atlantic, although we're mainly focusing on the Atlantic and mainly focusing on the MDR Atlantic. We're still even watching out for the Western Atlantic. And because of this actual intense amount of shear, so will the SAL start to increase here. So at the moment, this thing is not experiencing much dry air since it is pretty far south near the equator. A lot of that dry air is going to be a lot further to the north here. But as this track does move northward, this low pressure, it's going to be moving into a lot of shear, very dense, very thick, very, very dense and thick dry air and Saharan dust. Because of that shear does increase in the region, that it will allow for that SAL to get picked up and as well continue to increase here. So overall, this thing, as it goes to the northeast northwest star, it's going to just encounter very, very awful conditions, shear, dry air, and that dry air is going to be as a result of the SAL. But SAL will actually stay pretty calm into the last few days of June and early days of July, so gonna really watch out for something like that, possibly. So let's now go ahead and get a look at the ocean heat content forecast, and boys, ocean heat content getting a lot higher just across the Western Atlantic. So we're kind of gonna go down to that long range forecast. We're done talking about 95L. We're done talking about the conditions for 95L. Now we're gonna be getting into the long range forecast and focus on late June and early July and see whether conditions are going to be favoring a pretty active July. So we do see some really high ocean heat content across the region. We're going to get actually up to nearly 125 meters down into the actual ocean water, where we're seeing over 80 degree water. So overall, we're missing a lot of potential and a lot of stored energy within the Western Caribbean, as well even Gulf of Mexico, starting to see some high ocean heat content. So we do have MDR storms later in July that go like this. We can definitely see some very significant storms here as well. Even the MDR is starting to get a little bit higher ocean heat content. Still very low at the moment. Again, we do still have 25 to 26 degrees Celsius waters in the region for the northern and central MDR. But for the southern MDR, where we have that low right now, we are starting to see some higher ocean heat content as we're reaching over 29 degrees Celsius. So overall, ocean heat content is going to get really high. It's going to continue to get very high. So as we go further into the even late June and early July timeframe, if we see those big moisture bubbles with very little shear, we're going to be watching out for some systems and maybe head into the Gulf of Mexico and Yucatan Peninsula. That can as well be quite significant. Maybe like a Marco 2.0, where it's not too significant, but it does kind of RI into the early off season. So maybe a Marco season can very well, a Marco 2.0 can very well happen like we saw last year. Let's not go ahead and get a look here at the actual MJO forecast and seeing whether we're going to be seeing a lot of upward motion or a lot of sinking in motion within the region. So you don't basically, if you don't want to see oranges, reds, or yellows whatsoever. You want to start seeing some greens and some light green lime colors. So at the moment, we're really watching out for the Atlantic MDR and just general North Atlantic. So we actually kind of see a lot of those greens are focused specifically into the MDR, especially right now off Africa. This is going to be for portions here of the 23rd of June or something like that. That's the 0Z for 23rd of June. We do have a lot of rising motion off Africa, which will be allowing for a lot of moisture. That's exactly why we're talking about a big tropical wave right now, and that the dates all match up at the moment here. So as we even continue now into portions of late June and even all the way up into portions of mid-July, we're going to continue to see a lot of upper motion here across the MDR, which will allow for a lot of moisture. So we're looking at overall frequent moisture waves and tropical waves, which will obviously allow for development, even possibilities of some systems. Although we do see a lot of even as we now get later though into portions of late July, we start to see a lot of that sinking. So a lot, obviously, we will start to see a lot less tropical waves and even less, I guess, uh monsoon season type waves as we get into August, but we're still really watching out for the next month or so for the MDR. Obviously, even though we may not see a lot of we may not see a lot of rising with motion and a lot of sinking with motion. It still really won't decrease a lot of that probability of formation. The really big area where it'll kind of limit formation is going to be where we have those dark reds near the southwestern Caribbean. But right now, southwestern Caribbean is not that bad until we get really past July 18th. And let's not go ahead and get a look at the actual MJ forecast. So we do still have them start right now in the Western Hemisphere and portions of Africa. So we're going to continue to see that that eastern motion there of clouds and overall moisture across that region. Then actually MJO will kind of make its way into the 2 to 3 quadrant region, the Indian Ocean, which will actually still cause a lot of that moisture and upper motion of air in the Atlantic and specifically the eastern Atlantic. So overall, it's looking pretty good for the next few weeks for tropics.